The human soldier stepped onto the marble floor of the alien palace, his boots echoing across the endless corridor. Tall golden statues lined the path, each one representing a different royal ancestor of the Sci-Fi Empire. This place wasn't just a palace, it was history carved into stone. And now he was part of it. His name was Lieutenant Jace Marlowe, a decorated Earth officer, chosen to train an alien princess the galaxy considered a joke. Orders came straight from the Galactic Unity Council. No one refused the King of Sci-Fi. Not if they wanted peace to last. Jace wasn't told much. Only that the Princess Iraya was unfit to lead, unskilled in combat, and a constant embarrassment to the throne. But the king had made a desperate request. "Train her," he demanded, "or she will die in the war to come." The war wasn't supposed to happen. 2 years ago, Sci-Fi had signed the Unity Pact, but behind the scenes, Scourge worlds were gathering. They attacked border colonies in silence. No declarations, no mercy. The humans knew the pattern. This was how extinction began. Jace had fought the Scourge before. He had seen cities burn under their acid skies. He had heard the cries of children turn silent under collapsing rubble. Earth knew pain. But this planet Sci-Fi was still sleeping in its royal bedchamber. They thought beauty would protect them. Guards in shimmering armor flanked the grand throne. A massive blue-skinned king sat upright, staring at Jace with eyes carved from iron. His voice rumbled like thunder. "You are the Terran they sent?" Jace stood firm. "Yes, your majesty." "Lieutenant Jace Marlowe, reporting for duty." The king motioned to the side. From behind a curtain, she stepped out. Princess Iraya. She was unlike any warrior Jace had seen. Her skin shimmered like polished turquoise. Her long hair blazed in waves of pink, orange, and violet. A delicate circlet rested above glowing eyes. She wore ceremonial armor, but it was untouched, polished, and clearly unused. Zaraya didn't. "Walk like a soldier," she glided. And yet her face held something strange. Not arrogance, not fear, but something hidden, like a sealed box nobody dared to open. "This is your student," the king said without pride. "She has failed every tutor. Earth is our final request." Zaraya looked at Jace with no expression. Her hands stayed at her sides, still and graceful. Her voice was calm but empty. "If you are here to waste time, we can finish quickly." Jace didn't smile. "I'm not here for ceremony. I'm here for war. And if you want to survive it, your highness, then you'll do as I say." For a moment, no one moved. A breeze from the high columns fluttered her cape. The king gave a nod and waved them away. The throne room faded behind them. Outside, the gardens looked peaceful, but Jace knew peace was a lie. They walked in silence to the training grounds. Alien trees lined the stone walls, their leaves glowing with bioluminescence. Jace had studied Sci-Fi's traditions, but nothing had prepared him for how untouched it all felt. This world had beauty, but beauty wasn't armor. At the center of the field, Jace tossed a wooden practice sword to her feet. "Pick it up," he said. Zaraya stared at it. "Why? Swords are outdated. War is fought with fleets and fire." He stepped forward. "And when your guards fall, and the enemy reaches your throne room, what will you hold? A speech?" She didn't answer, but she picked up the sword. Her grip was weak. Her stance was wrong. Jace could see 10 flaws just from the way she breathed. He circled her slowly, correcting posture, adjusting feet, repositioning arms. Her face remained calm, but her silence was heavy. Hours passed. Mist rolled down the marble steps. Her body trembled with exhaustion. Still, she said nothing. Jace didn't stop. He had trained soldiers who cried, screamed, and broke. But she did none of that. She only moved. When the session ended, she fell to her knees, not from pain, but from something else. Her fingers dug into the dirt. Her head bowed. Not in shame but In restraint, Jace knelt beside her. "Why are you really here?" he asked. Zaraya didn't look at him. Her voice came softly. "Because no one believes I can be more than decoration. They say I was born during an eclipse that had cursed my mind. My brothers laughed at me. My tutors called me hollow." She looked up at him now. Her eyes didn't shine, they burned. "I want to prove them wrong. But I don't know how." Jay stood slowly. His voice was steady. "Then I'll show you how, but not as a princess, not as royalty. Only as a fighter." She nodded once. And for the first time, her lips curled into something close to a smile. Jace looked toward the stars. Somewhere in that dark sky, warships were gathering, but for now, he had one mission. And it wasn't to protect royalty. It was to awaken a warrior. Asterisk. Zaraya arrived at the training ground before sunrise. The stars were still visible in the sky. Her armor was no longer polished for ceremony. It was scratched. Dirt stained the edges. Her hands, once soft, now bore bruises. Jace watched from a distance. She hadn't noticed him yet. She was swinging a wooden blade at a training dummy. Her strikes were clumsy, but they were faster than before. More determined. Her breathing was steady. Her focus had changed. She missed a step and stumbled. The blade fell from her hand. She groaned but didn't stop. She picked it up again and resumed the stance. That's when Jace walked forward. "You came early," he said. "I need to," she replied without looking at him. "Everyone else started training when they were children." "I started last week," Jace nodded once. "You're not behind. They're just ahead. There's a difference." Zaraya paused. The words struck something in her. A kind of silence passed. Between them, not awkward, but heavy with meaning. She turned toward the dummy again and resumed her strikes. The hours were long. Jace taught her footwork, balance, and the art of movement. He showed her how to fall without injury, how to strike without rage, and how to hold a blade with purpose. Zaraya didn't complain once. During a break, they sat on the edge of the courtyard wall. The city stretched below them like a painting. Silver towers rose toward the sky. Alien birds soared in patterns. It was peaceful, but Jace never trusted peace. "I read your file," Jace said. "You studied language, diplomacy, music, no military training. No combat history. Why change now?" Zaraya looked at the horizon. Her voice was quiet. "Because I heard the soldiers whisper. They think I'm already dead. That I'll be the first to fall if the scourge attacks. I don't want to die without ever standing on my own." Jace studied her face. There was no pride in her words. Just honesty. She wasn't trying to impress him. She was trying to survive. Later that afternoon, the king summoned Jace alone. The royal chamber was dim, lit by golden lanterns and blue flame. The king stood near a large map of the galaxy, his armored hand resting on the border of a red-marked planet. "She's trying harder than ever before," the king said without turning. "But effort does not always lead to success. You know that, Terran." Jace kept his tone even. "I don't train royalty, Your Majesty. I train soldiers." "And she's starting to act like one." The king faced him. "Be careful with her. She feels things deeply, too deeply. I want her strong, not broken. She won't break." Jace replied. The king walked past him, stopping near the wide balcony. "You see potential. I see danger. The Scourge are not honorable enemies. They target the weak. They'll come for her first. That is why you're here." Jace looked the king in the eye. "Then I'll make sure they regret that choice." Outside, Zaraya waited in the corridor. She had overheard part of the conversation. Her face was still, but her hands were clenched. Jace noticed. "You heard," he said. She nodded. "He thinks I'll die anyway. That you're just delaying it." Jace crossed his arms. "Do you believe that?" "No," she said, "but I believe he does. And so does everyone else." He stepped closer. Then stopped proving them right. That night the training changed. Jace pushed her harder. Not with anger, but with purpose. He turned her stumbles into lessons, her pain into strength. She began to anticipate his movements. She dodged faster, struck smarter, and stood longer. By the third week, she defeated a royal guard in a mock duel. The court didn't cheer. They stared in silence, unsure if they should be impressed or ashamed. Zaraya didn't wait for praise. She walked past them with her head held high. Jace caught up to her in the garden later. "You know, that guard trained since childhood," he said. "He was distracted," she replied. "I'm not here to win their approval. I'm here to survive." That was the night he realized something had shifted. She was no longer trying to become a warrior. She was becoming one. They spent late hours in the moonlit garden. She asked him about Earth. He asked her about her childhood. Bit by bit, the walls between them faded. He told her about his sister back home. She told him about the secret poems she wrote when no one was watching. One evening, she handed him a folded cloth. Inside was a small metal pin, an old Seraphar warrior emblem, given only to those who earned honor through combat. It was hers. But now she gave it to him. "You fight with words too," she said. "And they strike deeper than any sword." Jace didn't know what to say, so he said nothing. But he kept the emblem close. In the following days, rumors spread. Through the palace, the scourge had taken another colony. The council denied it, but the signs were clear. Troops were moving. Ships were vanishing. Time was running short. Zaraya knew it too. Her focus sharpened. Her movements became deadly. And yet, with every session, she smiled more. Not because it was easy, but because she was no longer alone. Jace watched her spar against 3 guards in perfect rhythm. Her blade danced. Her body moved like she belonged on the battlefield. The princess the world called useless was now something else. He stood at the edge of the arena, silent and still, and for the first time, he realized he wasn't just training her to survive. He was training her to lead. Zaraya stood on the cliffside training platform, her body soaked with sweat. Her sword hummed with energy, not from power, but from movement. She no longer hesitated. Her arms knew the weight. Her feet knew the ground. Her eyes had stopped blinking. During combat, Jace tossed her a second weapon, smaller, curved like a crescent. "Dual wielding starts now," he said. Zaraya caught it mid-air and spun into position. "You said only advanced warriors use 2 blades," she replied. "You're not a beginner anymore," Jace said. For the next hour, the cliff echoed with the sharp clash of wood on wood. She blocked, dodged, countered. She wasn't perfect, but she was fast. She adapted. She remembered every correction from every session. Jace pushed her harder. Not because she was weak, but because she could handle it. He stepped back as she disarmed the last dummy. Its fake head rolled to the edge of the cliff. Zaraya exhaled and lowered her blades. The wind pulled at her hair. Her chest rose and fell, but her stance was steady. "Again?" she asked. Jace smiled. "Tomorrow. Today you rest." They walked through the narrow path that led back to the palace. The guards saluted her now. The same guards who once looked past her now stepped aside. She didn't comment. She didn't need to. Her movements had said everything. That evening, Jace entered the Hall of Strategy. The king was alone, studying the glowing war map that now had more red marks than blue. The scourge were advancing. "They took the Tarvan sector," the king said without turning. "And they did it in silence. No demands, no warnings. Just fire." Jace studied the map. Earth tried to negotiate with them once. The response was a mass grave. The king looked tired. His crown sat beside him on the table, not on his head. "And yet my council still believes diplomacy can work." Jace didn't respond. He knew the truth. The scourge didn't care about words. They fed on fear. They erased history. And they were coming here. The king finally turned. And what of my daughter? Is she still wasting your time? Jace stood straight. No, she's ready. More than ready. The king raised an eyebrow. Is that the soldier speaking or the man? Jace didn't flinch. It's both. The king didn't press further. He looked back to the map then. Waved his hand. You may go. Jace returned to the training courtyard. Zaraya was already there, leaning against a stone pillar. The stars had started to appear. She held a metal disc in her hand. A hologram shimmered on its surface. A face her mother's flickered in soft light. She died when I was young, Zaraya said without turning. I barely remember her voice, but I play this recording before every battle. Jay sat beside her. Was she a fighter too? No, Zaraya said. She was the only one who didn't expect me to be something I wasn't. She said I could grow at my own pace. That strength isn't measured by speed, but by endurance. Jace looked up at the stars. She was right. The next day, the council summoned Zaraya. The chamber was crowded with alien ministers in flowing robes and silver headdresses. The king sat on his throne, silent. The council leader, a tall alien with green eyes and sharp voice, stepped forward. Princess Zaraya, you are hereby requested to represent Seraphar in the Unity War Trials. 1 week from now, you will join the Mixed Species Defense Unit and prove your worth. Or step down from the royal line. The room went silent. Jace clenched his fists. It was a trap. The trials were brutal, designed to kill or expose weakness. The council didn't want her to win. They wanted her to fail in public. Zaraya bowed her head. I accept. Later, in the empty garden, Jace paced in circles. They want to destroy you. You know that, right? Zaraya was calm. Yes, that's why I must go. I won't let them shape my story anymore. I'll write it myself. Jace stopped in front of her. It's a death match. You'll face real soldiers, traps, hostile terrain, even sabotage. Zaraya's voice was soft. Then train me harder. Show me everything you know. Every weakness you ever saw in the Scourge. Every trick. Every rule worth breaking. He looked at her for a long time. Then he nodded. Kalan the weak became a blur. Jace trained her in rain, wind, and darkness. He built obstacle courses, simulated ambushes, and forced her to fight while injured. She never stopped. She never hesitated. She never asked for less. On the final night before the trials, they stood at the overlook near the palace. The city below shimmered with lights. The stars above blinked like tiny witnesses. Zaraya turned to him. If I don't come back, you will, he interrupted. She shook her head. No, if I don't. I want you to remember that for once in my life, I felt like more than just a royal problem. You made me feel like a person. Jay stepped forward. He reached into his coat and pulled out the old Seraphar emblem she had given him. He placed it in her hand. Then go show them who you are. She closed her fingers around it, and in that moment, she was no longer just a student, a daughter, or a forgotten royal. She was a warrior of her own making. Asterisk. The war trials were held on an unmarked moon orbiting a dying gas giant. Its surface was cracked, its air thin, and its silence absolute. This was where legends were made or destroyed. Zaraya stood at the starting zone, surrounded by warriors from across the galaxy. Some wore heavy armor. Others carried advanced tech. Each one had survived battles. Each one looked at her and saw a princess playing soldier. She wore no crown, no colors of her house. Just the lightweight armor Jace helped her modify for speed and flexibility. On her back were twin blades. On her belt, a pulse dagger. Her hands trembled once, then stopped. A horn sounded from the tower above. The gates opened. The trials had begun. Zaraya ran into the darkness. Sand and ash kicked up under her boots. Rocks jutted from the ground like broken teeth. The terrain shifted with every step. Somewhere out there, other fighters were waiting. Traps were armed. Drones were watching. The first attack came from a shadow. A reptilian alien leapt at her with a roar. Ziraya ducked and rolled. Her blade met the attacker's side. He collapsed without a word. She didn't stop to look. Movement was survival. Stillness was death. She followed the markers Jace taught her to recognize patterns in terrain. Shadows too perfect, wind that didn't match the landscape. She avoided 3 traps. Disarmed one. By nightfall, she had taken down 5 opponents, all non-lethal. But each one marked her path with fear. Back at the palace, Jace paced in the war chamber. A live feed flickered on the wall. No sound, only images. Council members whispered among themselves. Some watched with narrowed eyes. Others watched with disbelief. The king sat silent. His face unreadable. She moves like a ghost. One minister muttered, "She fights like she was trained on Earth." Another said, "Jace didn't look away from the screen. She was trained by pain. That's stronger than pride." On the moon, a sandstorm rolled in. Visibility dropped. Ziraya covered her mouth with a cloth and slowed her pace. Static crackled in her ear. The trials weren't just about fighting. They were about surviving the unknown. A flare lit up the sky. Another fighter was eliminated. Only 6 remained. Ziraya climbed a jagged ridge and spotted 2 combatants battling below. One of them was bleeding. The other had a shield drone. It was a one-sided fight. The drone buzzed toward the injured fighter. Ziraya didn't hesitate. She leapt down the slope. Her blade sliced through the drone's core. Sparks burst into the air. The shield dropped. The injured alien looked at her in shock. "You helped me," he said. "Survive first." "Talk later," she replied. They moved together toward a shelter point. He limped. She covered. Behind them, footsteps echoed. Another challenger. Ziraya handed the injured one her second blade and whispered a position tactic. The enemy appeared. Ziraya stepped out to draw attention. As planned, the limping fighter flanked and struck from behind. Clean, effective. They won. Later, the 2 rested inside a stone alcove. The alien turned to her. "You're not like the others. You fight smart. And you care." Ziraya stared at the stars above. "I wasn't raised to fight. I was raised to smile and sit still. Then someone taught me to move. And I haven't stopped since." The final day arrived. Only 3 fighters remained. Ziraya, the injured alien, and a brute from the ice colonies. The last round was a free-for-all. The only rules stand alone at the peak when the horn sounds. Ziraya reached the peak first. But the ice brute was already climbing fast. The injured fighter stayed behind, guarding the base. Ziraya faced the brute with both blades ready. He roared and charged. She sidestepped. His axe swung wide. She cut low, aiming at his legs. He blocked with heavy armor. She danced backward. The ground cracked under his weight. She used it. With one step, she led him to a weakened ledge. He charged again. She rolled aside. The brute's momentum broke the ledge. He fell halfway down the slope, groaning. Not defeated, but delayed. Ziraya turned. The horn blared above. She stood alone at the peak. Victory. Back at the palace, the hall erupted. Some cheered. Others went silent. The king rose to his feet slowly. His hands clasped behind his back. "She didn't just win," he said. "She led, she saved. She became what I thought she could never be." Jace allowed himself a breath of relief. Then, pride. That evening, when Ziraya returned, the city lit up with lanterns. Crowds gathered at the gates, but she didn't smile. She didn't wave. She walked straight past the noise and toward the training ground. Jace waited for her there. "You did it," he said. Ziraya stood in front of him. Her face was dusty. Her armor scratched. But her eyes were bright. "I didn't win to prove them wrong," she said. I won because you believed I could. That means more than the crown. Jace didn't speak. She stepped closer. I don't want to be remembered as the warrior princess. I want to be remembered as the girl who fought back because someone taught her how. Jace nodded. She placed the victor's emblem in his hand. Then let them write that story. A week after the trials, Ziria's name was no longer followed by doubt. The council didn't call her useless. The guards didn't look past her. Across the palace walls, murals of her duel were already being painted in soft gold and violet. But inside the training yard, nothing changed. She still arrived before dawn. She still practiced until her arms shook. And Jace still corrected every small mistake without mercy. You stepped too wide on uneven terrain, he said, watching her movements. Ziria nodded. Again, they sparred until the sun was high. A group of young palace trainees watched from the wall, whispering in awe. She ignored them. Praise didn't matter. Only progress did. Later that day, an emergency signal echoed through the royal chambers. A human scout vessel had intercepted Scourge movement just beyond Seraphar's defensive border. The report was brief. A fleet of 50 ships. Destination unknown. Silence followed. Jace stood before the war table. Ministers argued over strategy. Some suggested reinforcing the outer moons. Others wanted to call for help. The king remained quiet until the shouting faded. Then he spoke. We wait for confirmation. We will not stir panic without proof. Jace stepped forward. With respect, by the time we confirm, they'll already be on your doorstep. The king turned to him. So what do you suggest, Terran? Let me take a team and intercept, Jace said. We'll gather evidence, track their path. If they're coming, we'll know. If not, we lose nothing. The king's eyes narrowed. And who would lead this mission? Jace didn't hesitate. I will. Silence filled the chamber. Then, a voice from behind spoke clearly. Take me with you. Ziria stepped into view. Her armor was already packed. Her eyes held no doubt. The ministers reacted with panic. She's the heir. She cannot risk herself. She is not a soldier. The king raised his hand and the chamber fell still. Why? He asked her. Ziria looked at her father, her voice steady. Because I'm tired of waiting behind walls. I trained for war. I survived the trials. If I sit idle while others bleed, then all I earned means nothing. The king studied her face. Then he looked at Jace. If she goes, you protect her. At any cost. I always have, Jace replied. They launched within hours. A small recon ship, silent engine, black-coated hull. Ziria sat in the co-pilot seat beside Jace. She monitored the scanners. He checked the route. Their course cut between asteroid belts and shadowed moons. For the first time, they were truly alone. Are you scared? Jace asked quietly. Ziria tapped the controls. Only of not acting when it matters. The signal came 3 days into the journey. A brief burst of encrypted code. Jace recognized it instantly. Human scout distress. Faint, weak, but real. They followed it into a dark nebula. Visibility dropped. Gravity pulled oddly. Light bent around strange patterns. The ship groaned. Then they saw it. The human scout vessel was drifting. Hull damaged. No response. Jace docked with precision. They entered carefully. Inside, the lights flickered. Blood on the walls. No crew in sight. Ziria moved ahead, blade ready. Jace followed with his sidearm drawn. Every room was checked. Every corridor cleared. Then they reached the command deck. 3 crew members were alive. Barely. One pointed to the display. A recorded message. The screen lit up. Scourge ships. Dozens. Flying in formation. Coordinates marked Seraphar's inner moon. They weren't scouting. They were advancing in silence. We have to warn them, Ziria said. Suddenly movement. A thud behind the wall. Too late. An ambush drone burst through. Scourge tech. Fast. Clawed. It lunged at Jace. He fired twice. The drone spun and flew at Ziraya. She met it with her blade. Sparks exploded. Metal screamed. She drove the edge into its core and twisted. It dropped at her feet. Jace caught his breath. Well done. Ziraya glanced at the wounded crew. We can't leave them. They're coming with us. Back on their ship, they sent the transmission ahead of them. Full scan. Proof. Battle was inevitable. They returned to Seraphar under full alert. The council was already evacuating outer colonies. The military was scrambling. The king met them at the landing bay. One look at Ziraya told him everything. She handed him the chip with the proof. They'll be here in 3 days. He turned to the generals. Prepare the defense lines. Evacuate civilians. Ready all fleets. Then he looked at his daughter. You will not fight in this war. I will not lose you. Ziraya stepped forward. You already did. The girl you sheltered is gone. What's left is the warrior you doubted. I'm not asking your permission. The king said nothing. That night, Jace and Ziraya stood on the tower overlooking the city. The wind carried the sounds of ships preparing for war. Lights danced across the sky. Fighters training. Civilians fleeing. Soldiers sharpening weapons. Ziraya looked toward the stars. They'll come for me first. They always do. Jace stood beside her. Then I'll be standing right in front of you. She turned to him slowly. Her voice was quiet. You're not just my trainer anymore. You're my reason to keep fighting. Jace looked into her eyes. And you're the reason I still believe we can win. Below them, the world braced for war. And above, in the black sky, the enemy approached. Asterisk. The sky above Seraphar cracked open with fire. The Scourge fleet descended like a black storm. Dozens of warships tore through the upper atmosphere, their cannons glowing with violet plasma. The city alarms wailed across every sector. Ziraya stood at the front line of the defense wall, her armor now upgraded with battle-grade shielding. Her twin blades hummed at her sides. She stared at the incoming fleet, her eyes steady, her voice calm. This is it, she said. Beside her, Jace adjusted his combat rifle. He wore Earth-designed tactical armor, layered over Seraphar's light armor plates. The two styles didn't match, but together, they stood like one. All units in position. Came the command from the tower. The first blast hit the outer shield. The dome cracked, then held. Scourge pods dropped from the sky, slamming into the ground like meteors. From each pod, clawed warriors emerged tall, skeletal, and filled with rage. Ziraya didn't wait. She led the first charge. Her blade clashed with a Scourge warrior, sparks flying from steel and bone. She ducked under a claw swipe, drove her dagger into the enemy's gut, and spun around to block a second attacker. Jace covered her flank with precise rifle shots. Around them, Seraphar soldiers fought with renewed courage. Seeing their princess in the front lines changed something. What had once been fear turned into fire. The Scourge kept coming. Their numbers seemed endless, but Ziraya didn't slow. She pushed forward, cutting through enemy lines. Blood stained her armor. Cracks appeared in her shield. Still, she moved. Jace was never far. He fought like a shield around her, never letting the enemy close from behind. Together, they became a rhythm strike. Cover, press, repeat. Suddenly, a scream echoed from the eastern wall. A Scourge war beast had broken through. Towering, armored, breathing heat like a furnace. It smashed the defense post in two. Ziraya saw it. Without a word, she ran straight toward it. Ziraya, wait. Jace called, but she was already leaping across the rubble. The beast turned. Its claws reached out. She rolled under the swing, scaled the fallen column, and launched herself onto its back. Her blade drove into the weak point behind its skull. It roared. She held on. It spun violently. She stabbed again. The beast dropped with a final growl. She stood atop its body, breathing hard. Soldiers all around stared. Then cheers rose from every side. Her name echoed through the field. But the battle wasn't over. Scourge commanders activated. A second wave. From orbit, massive drills dropped into the ground, tearing through bunkers and sending shockwaves through the city. Jace grabbed Ziraya's hand and pulled her back. They're going underground. We have to stop that drill, or it'll reach the palace core, he said. They led a squad through the broken streets, past fire and rubble. Smoke filled the air. Screams echoed in the distance. The drill site was guarded by elite Scourge warriors. Jace gave the signal. Ziraya sprinted right while he went left. The squad engaged. Blades clashed. Fire lit the tunnel. One by one, they brought the guards down. Ziraya reached the drill controls and slammed her blade into the main core. Sparks burst. The drill died. Then silence. The remaining Scourge ships began to retreat. One by one, they blinked out of the sky. A signal from their flagship called them back. Something had changed. The Fearless had learned fear. Across Seraphar, lights flickered back on. Fires were put out. Medical crews rushed through the streets. The city had survived. Ziraya sat on the edge of the ruined tower wall. Blood trickled from her temple. Her blades were cracked. Her breathing was slow. But she was alive. Jace sat beside her. His arm was bruised, his chest plate dented. But he smiled. You did it, he said. No, she whispered. We did. The sun began to rise. Light spread across the horizon, touching every broken wall, every silent rooftop, every fallen banner. But high on the tower, 2 warriors sat in peace. Later, the king stood before the people. His voice was loud, clear, and filled with something. New pride, my daughter fought not because she was royal, not because she was told to, but because she believed in this world. And because someone believed in her. The crowd cheered. Ziraya didn't attend the ceremony. She was back in the training yard, helping the wounded recover. She handed blades to the next group of young fighters. She corrected their stances. She adjusted their footwork. Just like Jace once did for her. Jace watched from the corner of the yard. He didn't interrupt. He only smiled. That night, under the stars, they stood alone once more. The war was over. But something else had begun. You were supposed to train a princess, she said. No, Jace replied. I was sent to train a failure, but I found a fighter. And I fell in love with her. Ziraya stepped closer. Her hand touched his armor. Her voice was soft. Then stay. Not as a trainer. Not as a guard, but as mine. Jace leaned his forehead against hers. Always. Above them, the stars returned to silence. And below, in the heart of Seraphar, a love that had survived war began to grow in peace. 3 months after the war ended, Seraphar was rebuilding. Towers once scorched now stood tall again. The broken roads were repaved. Children played in streets where silence had once ruled. The scars of the invasion remained, but so did the strength that had awakened. Ziraya walked through the new military academy grounds. Young recruits stood straighter. When they saw her, some saluted. Others whispered. She wore no crown. Just her light armor and a simple sash across her chest. It read, First Blade of Seraphar. She earned that title not by blood, but by battle. Not because she was born to it, but because she had fought for it. In the courtyard, she sparred with 3 students at once. She moved like wind, light on her feet, sharp with her strikes. The students fell back, laughing, gasping, trying again. She helped each one up. Jace stood by the rail, watching her. He had been offered medals, titles, even a position in the Seraphar Council. He refused most of them. He wasn't here for power. He was here for her. He now trained the planetary guard, blending Earth tactics with Seraphar's tradition. A new defense force, born from unity. Every day he trained beside her, not above her. That night, they walked along the palace gardens. The night breeze carried the scent of glowing blossoms. Zaraya held a scroll in her hand. It was sealed with her father's emblem. He wants me to take the throne, she said quietly. Jace looked at her. Will you? I don't know, she answered. I always thought ruling meant being locked in chambers, wearing gold, making speeches. But maybe it doesn't have to be that way. They sat under the arch of starlight trees. The leaves shimmered as if listening. What do you want? Jace asked. I want to keep building, training, protecting, she said. And I want you by my side. He reached out, taking her hand gently. You never needed a throne to lead, he said. But if you sit on it, you'll change how it's used, she smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. In the weeks that followed, Zaraya accepted the crown, not as a queen who ruled above, but as a warrior who stood among her people. Her coronation was not held in the royal hall. It was held on the battlefield where she had fought her hardest fight. Soldiers surrounded her. The people watched from the hills. No thrones, no gold. Just her voice. I was once told I was nothing more than a shadow, she said. Today, I say we rise from the shadows together. The crowd erupted in cheers. Beside her stood Jace. He wore no armor that day, just the ceremonial green of earth, but his hand stayed close to hers. Silent, steady, present, peace lasted longer than anyone expected. The scourge never returned. Perhaps they feared Seraphar's new strength. Or perhaps they had learned that some planets were not worth testing twice. Zaraya and Jace traveled to other worlds. They taught together. They spoke to divided councils. They turned ancient rivalries into alliances, not by force, but by example. On one quiet night, aboard a diplomatic cruiser, Zaraya looked at him across the balcony deck. You changed my world, she said. Jace tilted his head. No, you changed your world. I just handed you the blade. She walked to him slowly. Then let me hand you something in return. From her robe, she pulled a small box. Inside was a ring not made of jewels, but metal forged from her trial. Blades, polished, shaped, worn by time and fire. For your finger, she whispered. And your heart. Jace took it, his voice low. Does this mean what I think it does? She smiled. It means I'm yours, in war, in peace, in everything. He placed the ring on his finger. Then he kissed her, not with urgency, but with quiet promise. Their union was not announced with trumpets or banners. It was known in how they moved, in how they stood, in how they protected what they loved. Back on Seraphar, the academy trained its 1,000th recruit. A statue stood at its gate. Zaraya, in her battle pose, blades drawn, head unbowed. And beside her, a smaller statue of a Terran soldier, hand on her shoulder, rifle resting peacefully. A plaque below read, she was called useless until she became unstoppable. He was sent to teach but stayed to believe. Together, they changed a world. Years passed. Children born after the war grew up hearing the stories, not just of war, but of courage, of patience, of love. And somewhere in the hills of Seraphar, far from the palace, far from the politics, a small home stood near a lake. There, two warriors sat by the water, fishing rods in hand, laughter in the air. Zaraya leaned back against Jace. Do you think they still talk about us? Jace smiled, without looking. They always will. And the stars above watched in silence, remembering everything.